There are some games out there in the gaming community that are cute yet disturbing at the same time. Have you ever played the game The Binding of Isaac? This is available on the Vita through the Binding of Isaac Rebirth remake of the original PC game, and it is very cute in a way, but it's also very disturbing in a way. Another game by the same developer has recently released on the Vita just this past week. That is what we're here to talk about today. Here is my official review of Super Meat Boy. The plot of Super Meat Boy revolves around three main characters: Meat Boy, a square-shaped block of meat; Bandage Girl, another square-shaped character covered in bandages; and Dr. Fetus, who is, as you might guess, a fetus in some sort of mechanical body. The story starts showing that Dr. Fetus hates Meat Boy so much that he beats him up and kidnaps Bandage Girl away. The plot of the game revolves around Meat Boy chasing after Dr. Fetus and Bandage Girl so he can rescue his girl. Now, with this in mind, are you starting to get the cute yet disturbing part of this game yet? You play as a block of meat trying to save your girl from an evil fetus. Just let that sink in for a moment. Super Meat Boy is a 2D side-scrolling platformer in the vein of games like Super Mario Bros. And other retro platformers of that era. When you first start the game, you will be in your first world, or chapter as Super Meat Boy likes to call it. In each chapter, there are a bunch of stages you can go through in any order, as well as a boss stage. You have to clear a certain number of stages in each chapter to unlock the boss stage that goes to the next chapter. You don't have to do every single stage in the chapter, but it is a little bit easier if you just start with the first stage and it will automatically take you to the next stage. You repeat this process, going through stages and bosses, until you get through all 6 main chapters of the game and beat the final boss to unlock the extra chapters. Now, when you're going through each stage, you don't have any combat elements like you do in Mario games, so you will have to be avoiding and jumping around various hazards and enemies. And the hazards are plentiful. There are pitfalls, saws, spikes, roaming enemies, the list goes on. When you're doing this, there are a lot of physics elements that also come into play here. You have a dash button, just like you do in Mario, which is directed with the square L or R buttons. And this is required because if you dash while you're in the air, you'll move a lot farther because you're putting a lot more weight on your fall. There are many platforms, especially towards the end of the game, that require you to either do a dashing jump to get to, or to do a dashing fall to get to. Now, aside from just completing your objective to get from point A to point B in the stage, there are also a few hidden things you can look for. In many stages, there are bandages you can find, which are key to unlocking new playable characters, and there are also warps that you can go into for warp zones. These will unlock some extra stages that function a little bit differently than the normal stages. Finally, there is the Dark World. When you go through the game normally, you are going through what is called the Light World. If you tap the square button at the level select screen, however, you'll switch to the Dark World. The Dark World is basically the same amount of stages as there are in the Light World, but they're a lot harder. The Dark World is also required to go through to see the game's true ending. Now, there's only one complaint I really have with this game, not with the presentation, not with the control scheme, but the network features. Super Meat Boy has online leaderboards and online cross-save features, so you can save your game across the PS Vita as well as the PS4. The problem is, as long as you have the Wi-Fi enabled, you're going to get almost constant pop-ups about the network features. Even when I'm logged into the PlayStation Network and have the leaderboards going, I will still get pop-ups where you can do leaderboards, you can do cross-save, there's a new update for the game, the list goes on. It got so bad that I just turned the internet connection on my system off, just so I wouldn't be constantly bothered in the middle of stages. As far as time is concerned, you should expect to do a lot in the game. Some of the stages, if you know what you're doing, can probably be beaten in about 10, 20, 30 seconds, and the boss fights are a little bit longer. I would clock the boss fights more like 2 to 4 minutes. If you know what you're doing, you can get through the game pretty quickly. However, the difficulty definitely comes into play here. Super Meat Boy is one of the hardest platforming games I have played on the Vita in my time. In the beginning of the game, it's not too hard, but once you get towards the end of the game, it gets so hard that you'll likely be cursing and wanting to throw your Vita across the room. It's not impossible to beat, but it is a very challenging game. So, across the difficulty, the light world levels, the dark world levels, and the extra chapters, you should expect to spend at least 5 to 8 hours in the game. When I first got to the final boss in the light world, I spent a good hour, if not longer, doing constant retries just to beat that one stage. As far as the presentation is concerned, everything looks good here. The visuals have come over without any problems and everything looks crisp and smooth. The load times are short, and the frame rate is a wonderfully steady 60 frames per second and never dips while you're playing the game. Super Meat Boy has come to the Vita in all of its disturbingly yet cute wonder. On the downside, the game does have a very annoying network pop-up feature as long as you have the Wi-Fi enabled on your Vita. Outside of this is one of the most well-done indie ports that the Vita has to offer, and is also a nice, challenging platformer to play on your PlayStation TV. PlayStation Vita Reviews rates Super Meat Boy a 9 out of 10. If you would like to comment, feel free to below, or head to my site at vitareviews.net.